he does seem to be fully healthy and explodes out of his breaks.
Oh, yeah.
One cut go. We saw versus Utah. I saw some like really, really good patience.
Dillon Johnson was running to the right of the offensive line, and I couldn't even see Jonah Hill Jonah Ellis in the. I couldn't even see it. Same thing. Where's the weakness in his game now, man? Like, he's so solid.
Hood?
Agreed. I mean, I would say he made him look like Jonah Hill.
But it is absolutely something to be said by these coaches and by these players to pick each other up like this in key moments, because this is not the first time that's happened this year.
Hood, welcome to Dubbed Up for the first time.
What's good? I appreciate y'all for the invite, for sure. Two brothers, right? My brothers.
Stoked to have you, Hood.
So we had a crazy weekend. We're 10-0, fellas. Ranked right now, it's Monday, so we haven't seen the CFP rankings, but we're ranked 5th in the AP still, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. But what are our thoughts from what just happened this weekend? I mean, we're 10-0 for the first time since 91. Izzo, what are you thinking?
Game-wise, like, I feel like this was the tale of two halves defensively, and it kind of was offensively too. Like, I thought that I was critical during the game, like to the point where, say whatever about staff and all that type of thing. But I just think I was blown away by the way that this staff turned around in the second half and made the adjustments. And that gives you some confidence. And in the second half, we've been a better team defensively throughout the season for the most part than
very true.
I'll tip my cap there. So, we'll get into it more, but those are my initial thoughts.
Hood, what about you?
Yeah, man. The number 5, obviously, I think a lot of people are going to have an issue with. I think, you got CFP media kind of mentioning how the Pac-12, is the best conference and, having the most ranked, throughout the season. They're giving love to Colorado. They're giving love to USC, UCLA, even Wazoo at times, Oregon State. But then when they put pad to paper or a pen to paper, that's when they decided to change their mind. You know what I mean? So it seems like they just don't believe, even their own eyes. But at this point, we're still in control of our destiny. So ranking us at 5 with 2 weeks to go plus conference championship game, the dominoes are going to fall. So at this point, we'll remain the people's champ. You know what I mean? We'll remain the people's champ. I'm not too concerned. We handle our business. This is another ranked win versus these if we get that. So I think the chips will fall where they may. So I can't really stress that. But in regards to the game, I think like everybody said or has kind of like pointed to, first half came out slow. I think our winning recipe early in the season was getting up early on offense, and we kind of have, and it allows our defense to kind of settle in earlier and play a little bit more aggressive. And we haven't been scoring on our first possession as consistently. So the offense kind of being out of rhythm early has led to our defense, having to play with the ball at 0-0. Versus 7-0 versus 10-0, forcing pass game, being able to be more aggressive in the run game, things like that. So, The adjustments.
I think you're right. I think the offense starting slow the last few weeks is definitely made the defense it's been more unpredictable for them. Like you said, if you're already up 7-10 points up, when they get in, they're going to be having to force the ball down the field. For me, I think that I think the 5 ranking is ridiculous, but it's going to play itself out. So it is what it is. What we were talking about before we got on was, I believe we've already clinched a Pac-12 championship appearance. If we look at the standings, Washington right now is 10-0, 7-0 in conference. You have Oregon, who's 9-1, 6-1 in conference. Oregon State, who's 8-2, 5-2 in conference, and then Arizona, who's 7-3, 5-2 in conference. So, if say UW was to lose out, they lose to Oregon State and Wazoo, right? That puts us at 7-2. If Oregon wins out, that means Oregon State has another loss, and we already have the tiebreaker over Arizona with the head-to-head. And if Oregon State wins out and beats Oregon, then they have 2 losses, and we have the tiebreaker over them as well. Mm-hmm. So I haven't seen anybody say this, and maybe if I'm wrong about the tiebreaker, like the head-to-head, if that's not the tiebreaker, which would be ridiculous. But it was ridiculous last year, so it is what it is. We should be in the Pac-12 championship game as of right now. I'm waiting to get the confirmation on that though, because that's pretty
weird
big.
That it hasn't been like tweeted out like by a bunch of different reporters. It's odd.
Yeah,
the
very odd.
Add up.
There's probably randomly something we maybe
Exactly.
missing.
Yeah.
Some win percentage.
I posed the question on Twitter, so I'm hoping to get some more clarification from anybody that might know the rules a little better than I do. But let's dive into the game real quick, because the game was, man, just like the last few weeks, all been nail biters where it's a lot of scoring, some defense, and then a lot of not defense. When we're looking at this game and we're talking about the tale of two halves, like Izzo said, how are we feeling about what the defense showed in the first half versus the second half, and how do we feel about why they're in those positions? Which one of you guys wants to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first. I mean, turnovers in the second half, the thing that stands out, obviously, right? So you end the game with Dom. You got the Alfonso pick that was supposed to be pick 6, but he drops it on the 1, turns into a safety. There was a lot of opportunities for the defense to show opportunities to step up, and they seized them. I think it was the first play after Alfonso drops that ball, and you can hone it in as a defense, or you can get fired up and go get it for your boy. And that's exactly what happened. It didn't look like there was an offensive line to be had for Utah on that play. There was 3 dudes in the backfield right away. But
hey, I'll tell you what, Tupatala better take Thule out for dinner and buy him the biggest steak in Seattle, because he saved the day for him.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to hear about Hood's thought or analysis on the secondary, because it seemed like the secondary just was a new squad. There's been tackling issues, generally throughout the season, just not that it's been a huge thing. Jabbar has been nails, Mish has been nails, but it seemed like guys like Vince came up and made a couple big plays. Elijah Jackson has made some big plays. I don't know, from what you saw, did you see any major scheme changes that maybe the casual fan may now pick up on in the second half?
No, I think it was just like you were kind of alluding to, it was the opportunities. Dom's pick was, you kind of had to make a play on fourth down, and then you're at the half-yard line. You got an opportunity as a defense to make a play. But outside of Dom hasn't been beat like that one-on-one all season.
Right.
He's always at least been in contact with the guy. I think he was just squatting on the route, not expecting Vele to run a big post like that. And then and Elijah just, missed tackle, didn't maintain his leverage. Those are 2 plays that I feel like, we're big on our defense, but I think we have to give some credit to Andy Ludwig. You know what I mean? Oftentimes we see these offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators potentially getting head coaching opportunities at other places, and Ludwig's name pops up almost every single offseason. So I think we have to respect there. Lincoln Riley, when they played them, he said that they did, and then people laughed, but he said they did stuff in the first half that we hadn't seen all year on tape. Kalen DeBoer said the same thing. So at the end of the day, I think the first half, they just weren't prepared for some of the schematic things that they were doing on offense, or some of the, I would say, the play balance. I don't think they expected them to come out and throw the ball the way they did. I think it was just coaching.
I was about to say, I think what you're saying is right, because have you noticed this? Everybody in this last few weeks is getting that. They're all kind of hitting that gauntlet where everybody's playing Oregon or us or SC or Utah or Oregon State. And it seems like everybody had some things in their back pockets that they were waiting to unleash during this time period. And now you're starting to see that play out where they're like, nobody ever did this before. This is new. It's what they're waiting for. And I think that's what championship teams do.
Agreed. And and Washington winning the games when you're getting the best shot from all these guys, the haymaker 100%. Punch from all these guys, means a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Utah, and they had some success on the ground in terms of explosive plays. Like I think their biggest play in their biggest run in the second half was a 10-yard run. It was an 11-yard run.
Yeah.
So it's like you just
76 yards.
Kudos to the staff, man. Like in general, like there's one thing to be said. There's something to be said about this team not scoring. They scored 6 points against Oregon or what have you, right? Like, so the floor. That's the floor. And they had a good game plan for Washington to start the game. And like Hood had like he had said, they did a good job not playing not dropping behind by 10 and then having to fight back and play within their scheme, and that forced UW to play a disciplined game on defense the entire game. And the first half seemed undisciplined, and then something happened in the second half. Somebody got chewed out. Something happened, and they just came out and they were nails. yeah.
Well, and I wonder if that's a valid criticism too. Is like, hey, I appreciate the adjustments, but what's taking so long why is it taking 2 quarters to adjust? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, you think about the privilege of playing defense with a lead versus, especially early. I mean, if you want to talk about defense, Utah's first possession was a 3-and-out, and then we didn't score. So at the end of the day, if we scored there, then you apply pressure to Ludwig's script. Now you may force explosives. Now you may have some pressure on the offense and be like, dang, these boys are in rhythm today. Doggone it. Okay, well, I might have to do this or I might have to do that. So I think we're such a explosive offensive team that our offense plays a huge part into how our defense can, I would say, emotionally play.
That's real. I think that pressure, no matter how you apply it or where it comes from, has an effect on play. And when the offense is applying that pressure and people feel like they're getting behind on us, that's when they make dumb mistakes in our defense, just like Mish did against Arizona State, able to take advantage of one of those young players or those players that aren't quite ready. I also think a big thing that gets left out of what happened between Oregon and Utah was Sione Vake. The kid who played both ways. He was injured and he tried to go against Oregon, but couldn't really do it. And we saw how explosive of a player he is on both sides of the ball. And I don't know if that's going to make up, a 30-point difference, but it might be a closer game having that guy playing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I've never seen someone outrun Dom. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. That's real. He's fast.
And that can be a 14-point swing. That can be a touchdown and then them not scoring one. Like it can definitely have that impact. But I think just to the point of what you guys are talking about, where like the offensive play is impacting the defense, like it seemed like UW's drives were methodical all game and like tiring down that defense. By the time the third quarter rolled around, it seemed like they were pretty gassed. Like
for real.
Getting those short, I mean, we'll talk about it, but Westy's catch, like, Dillon Johnson converting on fourth down, they were 2 for 2 on fourth down. I think we were like 5 for 11 on third, which is 5 for 14 on third, which is one of our worst.
We were 2 for 2 on fourth though.
Yeah, we're 2 for 2 on fourth, 5 for 14 on third, which is honestly on third down. That's one of our worst performances. But what it tells you is that when we converted, we scored. When we converted on third downs in a drive, we scored, and it lengthened. I think this was one of the first games where we won the possession battle. I know Mike's been tracking that throughout the year.
Yeah.
It might have been like 10 minutes. It was
we had
35-25 around there.
You're right. 34-58 to 25-02 was the possession. And it's one of the first times where we really we were able to get in front of them. But let's focus on the offense now real quick because that's a very good point. Now, Hood, I know you're paying attention to what we've been doing offensively, and everybody talks about us being a passing offense, but the last couple of weeks, our running game is really kind of we're showing the country this isn't an air raid offense. I was literally arguing with somebody about that earlier on Twitter, where we might be based in some air raid concepts, but we're way more on that 60-40 as opposed to a 70-30 or less like you see in most air raid systems. What did you think about the running back play, starting with DJ?
First of all, we're a pro spread. And the running back play I thought was Westover said post game that they've been practicing very hard And the physicality in those practices, especially late in the year, has led to the running game in the actual game. I wouldn't say being easy, but it's what they've been doing in practice and executing in practice. So I've been really impressed with not only just DJ, but how physical the offensive line has been in the run game. Whether assignment is missed or not, they've been playing physical football as opposed to earlier in the season. So I think DJ is just able to take advantage of a lot of those openings. One thing during the USC game I really noticed was he does seem to be fully healthy and explodes out of his breaks.
Oh, yeah.
One cut go. We saw versus Utah. I saw some like really, really good patience. I kept saying and repeating like, "Oh, that was a pro run. Oh, that was a pro. Oh, that was a pro run." So it just seems like even if a pulling guard or tackle overruns a play or doesn't get there fast enough,
right?
He's got kind of the footwork to be able to slow down, speed up, explode.
Yep.
So yeah,
well,
it's athleticism for sure.
Yeah, I think it's the speed and the quickness, but also the vision. Kind of, we got used to it with Myles Gaskin, where he's able to see, hey, the hole is an opening here, but I see where it is and cutting back. Also, I mean, because DJs look great, and Izzo, I want you to cover this because you've been talking about this at length. Where the other two backs who I think are a little bit more shifty and quicker, Tybo Rogers and Will Nixon. They only had 3 carries, but they had like 37 yards on 3 carries.
Yeah.
That's a lot of yardage, and it's explosive. And I know they also got I know they got the balls thrown to them in the passing game. I don't think they caught any of them, but especially I saw Tybo Rogers drop one that hit him right in the hands. I really think, especially going into these games, and Oregon State especially, just because I think these athletes are better than any of the athletes they're going to be seeing on the Oregon State side of the ball. They need to get that in the playmakers' hands. What do you think about how they're utilizing these other backs? Because I know you're a big fan, especially of Nixon.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I am a big fan of Nixon. I will say that, but like. I mean, how do you keep Tybo has like playmaking ability. He absolutely
really
shook 2 dudes. He can break tackles. Like you see it for the future for him. Like there was one run where like you would look for a freshman running back to make like shift his focus and really focus on making the first guy miss and then not extend the play. But he knew confidently against one of the best defenses in this conference that he was going to make that first guy miss, and he was already looking to the second level, third level. And they're taking advantage of their opportunities. And it says something that the staff has the faith on third down to go to the second and third deep guys. So I love that. But, to Hood's point about the offensive line, for me, the guys who actually stood out in this game, in the run game, were the tackles. And they went off tackle a couple times. And, you saw rewatching the game, Brock go nuts on one of the touchdown runs because Troy just absolutely just went.
Yeah.
He just literally moved the guy. But Roger, too, I mean, and I know we'll go into it, but and I know you guys saw this on Twitter, but with Roger's effectiveness on Joe, he just shut down one of the best. I mean, literally, he was non-existent in this game. Like he shut down Jonah.
Yeah,
that was no problem. And there was one run that honestly from DJ in the second half where it should have been contested, and you would have never thought that this was actually going to be a running play if you just focused on the offensive and defensive line, like and how they were aligned. And Roger cleared Jonah out. He wasn't even relevant in the play. He was like over on the left side of the offensive line, and the gap was just massive, man. And so I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. I don't know how the interior offensive line graded out for this game, but Roger and Troy just absolutely manhandled their guys like all game. It was phenomenal.
Really did. They really did. I'm actually gonna stick with you, Izzo, on this next one because I want to talk about Mike and how Michael Penix did. Now I know he came out and it was a rough start for him. I know the weather was windy and rainy and all that, and he's struggling to get that that completion percentage above 50%, but then he settled in and he ended up with 332 yards, 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing. How do you feel about Michael Penix's performance and how it might affect not just the team, but also his Heisman hopes?
I mean, it's so funny where he's like, we're having a down game for Mike a little bit, and he throws for 337 and he has 2 touchdowns and 1 on the ground. It's like what a lucky situation we're in to have, like, exactly, a luxury to have that as your down game. But I mean, look, I thought Mike was definitely impacted by the weather, but I thought this was one of the more obvious. The first half was one of the more obvious halves where Jalen McMillan, like, they need that guy over the middle again. And Jeremy had a phenomenal game. I'm not taking anything away from Jeremy, but
Jalen played.
Yeah, and he played. And did he have any targets? He had like
no
targets.
Think he did. I don't think he did. Yeah,
and it's not so much. It's not so much that it is his ability is as obviously it speaks for itself, but that the scheme changes a little bit, and they're not looking over the middle. And when they are looking to tight ends, it's typically outs and bubbles and stuff like that. And so it seems like maybe they're a little bit more reluctant to go over the middle in the first half. And they were just, it was just how the game played out. And again, they scored 28 points in the first half. It's not necessarily a bad one, but I just think it was weird because you look at his stat line and then you look at how things looked at the Heisman. You're like, Nix is now, there was one poll where he was in front of him. And then there was, it's like a split in ways. And it's like, man, I mean, that's wild to throw for that many yards, have 2 touchdowns, and then you actually, you drop, and you're going against, again, one of the best defenses. And
he ran for 1.
Yeah, he ran for 1.
Yeah, he had 3 total. He had 3 total touchdowns, and I think that when he came out there, he still had a performance where he was leading his team into scoring drives when we really needed them. Hood, I wanted to actually ask you this. I feel like since the Arizona State game, we've started to see that one of the ways to really get to Penix is blitzing that A gap. We talk about it weekly now. Have we seen Ryan Grubb and the staff starting to figure out ways to counter that? Because we're starting to see him hit those big plays, like that throw to Jalen Polk where he just pulls it from somebody from the defensive back, or the plays to like Rome in the end zone. What do you think is starting to change, and why do you think we're starting to see the success against those blitzes?
I mainly think it's they're starting to set those big shots up more. So I think Izzo was mentioning it, where we're running a lot more middle screens. We're running a lot of like double pump middle screens to Kolb, and a lot more tight end bubbles and quick hits. You saw the Jeremy play. And just to 1.2 that Izzo was mentioning is, we're attacking the middle of the field, but it's more intermediate. It's about 5 to 12 yards, and it's like Jeremy running crossers, whereas Jalen's advantage was he could split the middle of the field safeties.
Bingo.
And so what you're not seeing is deep shots from the slot guy running either like a head nod post and splitting 2 safeties in double coverage or bracketed. You're not really seeing that anymore. But I think they've had a little bit more success with that because the offensive line has kind of got in the rhythm a little bit more too, with Juice being back. But not to kind of be on any type of a negative kind of tone, but since ASU, there is this kind of like element of like seeing ghosts, where it's kind of like he's chucking the ball up instead of like trying to accurately place it there. He's kind of chucking the ball up and like Rome's down there somewhere and they're making a play, or Jalen's down there somewhere and they're just making the play. That's why you kind of can see the accuracy off a little bit more on those deep shots, because he's not even that deep post that Rome caught for a touchdown. People are applauding him throwing in the wind and throwing off platform, but his mechanics were all over the place. He had the arm to do it, but his mechanics were all over the place. And I think you're kind of seeing recently the mechanics are a little bit all over the place when they're bringing those A and B pressures. So
hence the percentage being down, because the last 2-3 weeks it's been, I don't think he's been over 60% in the last two weeks, maybe 3 weeks. So the offense definitely still though since those two games that were kind of sputtering, you've seen them start catching on. They did real well against USC, and they got it when we really needed it. Even though I have to admit it was frustrating, those two drives in the fourth quarter where they couldn't shut the door on them. Play a couple penalties where we didn't need them, but we also let's be honest, guys, the refereeing was hardcore. It was rough. I mean, I saw a lot of people talking online about, UW gets all the calls, but they didn't call Rome, and they didn't call anything against Rome until the end of the game. And they had their hands all over him. They were pulling him. They were pushing him. So we got to give them props for being able to fight through that, because it was rough. And you saw even KDB said today, he's like, man, I wish was it him or Grubb that said we need the refs to execute.
Yeah, man. It's weird. It's like, it feels like in the Pac-12, like normally you would say, this is how I think about it. Like, what percentage are you playing against the refs too? Typically it'd be like, 10%, and you got 5% on each side is being impacted. That'd be like a good game, right? Like a well-refed game. And it feels like for every game that we've been in, it's been, for at least maybe 4 of the last 6 weeks, I'd say, have been like the refs are impacting the game like 30% of the outcome.
Facts.
It's bizarre.
Yep.
It's like, and some of that's on us too, because none of these games have been blowouts, right? Where we just have it locked up for like the last however many weeks. So I think it was the last 7 weeks we've won by less than 10 points.
Yeah.
But it just feels like the outcome is being massively affected by.
We did beat SC by 11 though.
Yeah.
It's finally starting. You can see it finally starting to get to DeBoer though too. Like with that legal man downfield, I've never seen him so mad. Like being at the game, he was talking to that ref for a good 5 minutes. Yeah. There was a little break in time where he's having a conversation with him, and the whole team kind of comes and surrounds the ref, where the other refs had to kind of come in and like pull that ref away or pull KD away. Like, and that ref was trying to listen to him and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, even Utah fans were like, ooh, like that seems a little fishy. You know what I mean?
Well, he even said to the press today that he was correct on his call. That wasn't his bad. That was a missed call by the refs. Or a call on something.
Quentin Moore's downfield block, right?
Yeah. They said it wasn't available.
That was going into the half to get points, whether 3 or 7, which in 2-minute drill, we have 57 seconds total. And then in 2-minute drill, we usually execute in 2-minute drill at the end of half or at the end of the game. So that could have easily been a score, lock up on defense, get the ball back, go up by more. So
yeah, that's real.
Impact the game.
All right, before we head on to the standout players, one thing I wanted to bring up was the pass rush. We had kind of skipped over that during the defense. Trice, ZTF, but who actually really stuck out to me for the first time was Jacob Lane. I saw him rushing from the inside and maybe not getting sacks, but getting pressure that's forcing the quarterbacks out. Izzo, what do you think about the pass rush for UW?
Lane came in, I think he came in late in the second half, right? And he had somewhere between like 5 and 10 snaps, I think. And first of all, there's been a ton of hype for him coming out of camp, like almost to the point where they were thinking about maybe not like keeping his red shirt, because he's playing that well. He's that physical. And I think on he had 2 pressures in his play. Like I think he had 1 QB hit. But first of all, I just love him, and man, we've talked. Everybody knows. Like I think we've talked about it endlessly on this podcast, which is we need depth at edge, and if they're going to move Voy inside and do that thing because they need him, they need another guy on the interior defensive line. You needed another guy to sit up, and he did. So very enthused with him. Trice, another one of these games where it's 6 pressures, 3 hits, like no sacks, but. You just can't measure his impact on the game by how many sacks he's getting. It's just this year he's just absolutely dominant in creating pressure on his side, but for whatever reason is not closing the gap and getting to the quarterback in time. So, and Noah's pointed it out that the way he is, like how he rushes is he creates so much contact that like that this is going to be how his game kind of looks as he gets to the next level. And you already see NFL coaches like Robert Saleh saying, like, I don't even want to hear anybody measure who's the big defensive tackle for the Jets? Quentin
Johnson, Williams.
And somebody was like, I don't know about his production. He's like, dude, I don't even want to talk to you. You have no idea what you're talking about. He was immediately infuriated by it. But so him, ZTF, I mean, they're getting truly makes such an impact in that scheme of things.
Huge.
So
we're a different defense with him.
We're gonna
healthy or not.
Yeah, amen. I mean, we're gonna need that, especially as we head into next week, and we'll talk about that because I think Oregon State offers some opportunity for pass rushers. But I think they've been consistent, but to your reason why you're bringing it up, Mike, like they were noticeable in this game, and they were doing what they needed to do. So,
you got anything to add?
I would just throw another edge player out there that was impressive and has been impressive for the last 2 weeks in regards to his clutch play, and that's been Boy for sure.
Okay.
Clutch play versus USC, clutch play also versus Utah, getting that pressure towards the end of the game as well. So,
especially when he's rushing from the inside, though, I've noticed guards can't. They're not quick enough to deal with him, and I think he's the most effective there when he's coming from the inside.
Tell me if I'm off on this. And maybe I'm just kind of now realizing that this is why maybe we could feel a little bit more confident in our defense despite the first half performance. But it felt like heading into this year and during a lot of the games at the beginning of the year that the reason why there wasn't a ton of confidence on the defensive side at all was because the depth played at multiple positions that we're fielding injuries at hadn't seen game time. And now they're playing like this is like, a lot of guys like 4th, 5th game in a row. Nunley's seen the field a ton. And you start to see, Elijah Jackson, you start to see some guys making some strides here. And so I don't know. I kind of just feel this odd sense of confidence from that second half that it's like, man, if they put that together, they take that second half, whatever they were doing, that adjustment, move that thing up. They have the guys, man. They have the guys.
You can just see that they're not Jags. Like, especially early on at true freshman, redshirt freshman, sophomore, redshirt sophomore, you can see they have they're going to take their lumps, but they are actually pretty good players. Like even if you look at Elijah Jackson at the end of the day, I shook his hand at USC. I was like, dude, this kid is huge and lengthy. Like if he got
Dixon too
after this. Wild.
Dixon as well. And I think, we've talked about this a bunch, especially as pertains to Elijah Jackson. I like to use the correlation with Desmond Trufant because when he was here, his freshman or sophomore year, whatever it was, he got lit up. It was hard for him, but then he came back. Following year, he was better. The year after that, he was even better, and he ended up being one of the best to come out of UW. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Jackson because him and Dixon both have the body, the length. They look like NFL guys. And I think taking the lumps, especially with a championship team, it gives you that confidence because you're winning still. It's not your mistakes aren't costing them a game. And so I think this is going to pay dividends big time next year. Next year it's going to be.
Same thing with Kyler Gordon.
Oh, yeah. I remember Kyler Gordon really getting lit up his first times on the field. And then
lost the Cal game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's like these guys are taking coaching, man. They're taking coaching. And so kudos to them, man.
Yep. And it's one of the things because I get real mad about the coaching, especially the defensive coaching at times. Like I'll get pissed off at Morrell and Ainge because I know Morrell calls it defense, but then when they finally make the adjustments are good. My biggest critique would be like, man, can we get those adjustments a little bit quicker? Can we work on? Yeah, can we work? Because if we could do that at the beginning of the second quarter as opposed to the beginning of the third quarter, when we get to these championship games, when we start having to play Oregon again or this Oregon State game this week, or if we make it to the CFP or whatever bowl game we get into, those are when they're going to matter because the competition is going to be greater than what we've seen.
Agreed.
In theory. But all right, let's move on to the highlights and our standout players. So the way we do this, just so you know, is I want you to give me either a standout player or standout plays that you think really had an impact on this game.
Ooh, I got standout player. I gotta go Dom Hampton. And not even just because of the interception. He had a PBU that was kind of similar to the interception. Him not giving up on that big post by Devon Vele, catching him from about 4 to 6 yards behind. Him being the enforcer once after halftime, Eddie had that speech. And if there was one guy that seemed like he listened, it was definitely Dom Hampton, whether that's smacking the blockers coming through holes or getting off of blocks and making everybody feel him. So we talk about Bralen Trice, and every offensive lineman feels him when they're blocking. You feel Dom, he's making contact with you. And I feel like the second half, he really stepped up and set a tone for the whole defense, including Nunley, because Nunley, the first half was, a little shaky as well, but came out physical right next to Dom. So I think he set that tone for sure.
Okay. Izzo?
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned Trice, so I won't harp on him, but man, his impact is massive. Like, just think about what this defense looks like if you take Trice out of the game. If he got hurt, God forbid, or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It would look a whole lot different. So, I mean, he's an obvious one, but I thought Vince, to what Hood's saying, like Vincent Unley's adjustment in the second half, he's being asked to come back out after not playing for 2 weeks. The USC game was just rough. Like, you have to defend Caleb Williams, and there was a lot of no calls in the end zones and whatever, right? But yeah, I love the way that he looked come the second half and how physical.
You said Vince Nunley, right?
Vince Nunley,
yeah. Okay.
And a lot of that maybe Dom deserves some of that credit too for getting him fired up and ready. But I thought he looked decent in coverage. I think he had 3 targets and 3 where he was obviously the guy in coverage on him, and just 1 catch for the game. So,
and that catch, he was there. He was on him for that. I think that you have to tip your hat to the receiver on that one. I noticed that with Nunley in general, he's usually in position. Yeah. I think those ball skills are going to be what gets better over the offseason because those can be taught.
Did you? So when's the last time we saw a safety in position the way we saw him for that deep shot?
Yes. Yep. That's the perfect way of putting it.
We haven't seen a safety in that position. Now go play the ball, go make the play. But other than what Cam Fab in like week 2 versus a mediocre team, we haven't seen that versus the best teams in a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
And that was a DB in position over the top of the play. We can wait on the ball. We're waiting on the ball. We haven't seen that in a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No kidding.
You know who I think we also have to call out for this. That's just, man, every week he seems to show up saving the offense's ass, and that's Westy. Jack West, man, he is lunch pail kind of dude that when we really need it, we need that safety net. He's become Michael Penix's safety net. And he did it again this week. That 4th down catch, it was not on the money as far as the ball goes, but yet again, he makes a play. He bails out the offense, and he moves the sticks. So I think he's somebody we really gotta. He's quietly having a real big year because all his plays happen in big moments. They're not throwaway plays. You know what I'm saying?
They really trust the tight end group, man. It seems. I mean, maybe they just like stick out in my head, maybe for whatever reason, just because they're such big plays. But yes, like the catches have been crazy for Westy and for Colt for that matter in the back of the end zone or wherever it is. But and he had that bad drop this game. But nonetheless, like on 4th, it seems like a lot of the times they line up in big sets and then they're just confidently like they know we're good with running the out routes and like try to get one of these linebackers to cover Westy or Culp or Cuevas or whoever it is. Like, good luck, man.
And Westy said it was like one of the big things was he's like, I can just look over at Mike and be like, okay, I see the same thing Mike sees, so I'm gonna show my numbers a little earlier this play, or I'm gonna go deeper into this space over here. And he said him and Mike are typically on the same page when they see those types of things in clutch situations. So
dope.
That's dope chemistry.
Yep. Now, Iz, I'm gonna stick with you on this one. We as another player that kind of has showed up big time on tape, especially lately. We talk about Fautanu a lot, but what about Roger Rosengarten? Like he's starting to show that he's a big time player and he's going to be playing on Sunday.
And I'll want to pivot to Hood here because I know he has some things to say about Roger too, which I think are great. And to me, it was just really obvious that they were comfortable running to Roger's side on what is one of the best edges statistically in the country. Like, I think he was top 5 in the country in sacks for the all of the NCAA. I can't remember exactly what it was, but 11 sacks. I mean, that speaks for itself. But it's not only against the pass that he was great in and shut him down, but he was sealing the edge, and there was a couple runs where Dillon Johnson was running to the right of the offensive line, and I couldn't even see Jonah Ellis in the. I couldn't even see it. Same thing. Couldn't even see him barely in the shot. He was moved over to the left side of the offensive line, over by the center, over by Parker, because it's just Roger just sealed him completely out of the play, and he was nowhere around. And you saw it from both sides of the tackles in different spots of this game, but yeah, Roger's just. Where's the weakness in his game now, man? He's so solid.
Hood?
Agreed. I mean, I would say he made him look like Jonah Hill. I think going in this year, we just, we wanted to see kind of Roger show off an anchor. We saw he had the length and the size and the athleticism. We just wanted to see the anchor, and Jonah Ellis is a great edge to kind of prove that against. He held him at length for the most part, and then when he did get into his chest, try to go counter spin moves. Roger had the feet to kind of counteract that. If you look at the Rome touchdown pass in the back right of the end zone, you saw Roger kind of have to deal with all 3 of the elements of Jonah's pass rush game: the speed to power, the counter move. So he definitely had an NFL film, NFL tape game for sure.
Okay. Now,
I hope he sticks around. I hope he sticks around for next year.
We definitely can use him, but there's got to be NFL teams chomping at the bit. He's too big and too good, but we'll see. And I think where we're seeing a lot of this is it's starting to what the line is doing. We knew last year they weren't giving up sacks. I think Penix was only sacked 5 or 6 times last year. But in the run game is where it's really changed. And I want to give some love to Dillon Johnson. Dillon Johnson at UW has taken on a completely different role than he has ever in his collegiate career. Before this year, he never had more than 89 carries in a season. This year, he's up to 136, and he's got 790 yards, which 210 yards away from a 1,000-yard season. He's also got 11 touchdowns, which is really, really big. What do we think is adding to and Hood, I'll stick with you on this. What do you think is adding to why DJ's being able to move into this role that he never really has had before and being so successful?
I think the Mississippi boy was this type of running back from the beginning. And then you just find yourself in a Mike Leach system that only uses you in pass protection and, for checkdowns. Now you kind of get this big bruising running back, this one-cut running back in a system that's actually going to utilize his ability and benefits now from his pass game or his pass pro and pass catching experience that he had in Mississippi State. So I think the primary reason why he's doing so well is his health, his overall health. And secondarily, just the offensive line stepping it up and being extra physical, not only in the games, but practicing that. So, yeah, for sure.
Yep. Izzo, do we see anything like this? We all were expecting Cam Davis to step in and kind of be that number 1 back. And when he got hurt, DJ really kind of embraced it. I mean, he's only got 17 catches this year, but the rushing stats are insane. Did you see this coming when we got him in the portal?
You saw some of it, but you didn't see it. There goes my camera's a little bit blurry, but whatever. Yeah, I mean, you saw a little bit of it, but not to this extent. Like you were saying, we thought that Cam Davis was going to be kind of 1A, and that we thought that maybe Dillon Johnson was going to be 1B. And the big stat that jumps out, and we talked about this kind of all off season when we heard that we were going to be getting him, is that he's never fumbled, and maybe part of the reason why, knock on wood. Maybe part of the reason why we had tempered expectations is just because of those stat lines. And the thing I didn't think about, and that Hood brings up, and maybe I should have thought about it, is that Dillon Johnson wasn't asked to be this guy, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't capable. It's can you imagine being a head coach and having that type of kid who's as tough and running for 5.5 yards a carry his freshman year with no fumbles, and then doing no fumbles the next year, even on a limited carry count, and then calling, and then kind of insinuating that he may not be tough enough for that main role? It's like, I didn't put it together that, like you were saying, Hood, like that's a pass offense, and you have to you have to manage the personalities if you're going to want to keep a stud running back in your program and things like that. So there's things behind the scenes we don't see, of course. But yeah, I mean, you could, honestly, looking back, you could see it in my opinion. You could. And it's crazy, it's crazy to think that somebody couldn't, but yeah, I'm just thankful we got him, because I think prior to that ASU game, he was at like 6.7 yards a carry.
He's still averaging 5.8, and I mean that you actually bring up a good point. I was going to ask you is what do you think changed? Because since the Oregon game, his production has gone through the roof. I mean, versus Oregon, he was 20 for 100 in a tutty. The ASU game, of course, it was a bad one when he only had 6 yards. But then Stanford, 18 for 84 and a touchdown. SC was 26 for 256 and the 4 touchdowns, and then 23 for 104 and a touchdown this last week. Do you think it's just health? Is that the biggest reason why all of a sudden, as of the Oregon game, he started really producing? Because a lion's share of his yards have come since that game.
It is his health, and it's also like that ASU game. I think everyone just needs to throw that game away entirely statistically with how many guys were sick. Like that offensive line, I mean, was really, really sick. Mike was sick. They couldn't get anything going. So, yes, it does have to do with health, but it also has to do with his offensive line play.
It's also got to do with opportunity. You named the amount of carries that in those games too. Instead of it being 10 to 12 carries, I heard 23. I heard 26. You know what I mean? So it's opportunity for sure. And you were mentioning about what you saw in the portal, and it's pretty well known that I wanted to see a little bit more from him. And I think a huge element of his success has been around our strength and conditioning program for sure. If you saw, it's funny because I was telling my friend on Twitter, my brother Darker Knight, I was telling him right before the play happened at USC that he's never broken a play longer than 25 yards, and then he breaks that super long one. And you can see a concerted effort in his form. Like he breaks through the line, and then all of that lean forward stuff goes away. He immediately got upright and started pumping arms, high knees. So you can see there's a concerted effort to gain his explosiveness. And Grubb kind of mentioned that too, with his next step is going to be working on his speed. So yeah, he's still got some development to go too. That's the exciting part.
And I think the coaching staff was still trying to figure it out too. Because as I look at his stat line, against Boise, he only had 7 carries. Michigan State, he only had 8. He had 71 yards, though, on those 8 carries against Michigan State. And then Cal, he had 10 for 66 in the touchdown. And then Arizona was kind of his first big breakout game where he went 16 for 91 and 2 touchdowns. And then you had the Oregon game and the rest of the games that they've rolled off. And so it looks like he didn't play against Tulsa. And I think that the staff had to figure out who he was. I think if he has 1,000 yards, I see it being hard for him to come back, seeing as he already has 3 previous years.
Because I hope he does. And I think that I wonder if there will be mixed kind of feelings from scouts that want to see one more year, and because he wasn't healthy at the front end, or if he does have enough on tape. Because 0 fumbles and how many opportunities he's had. Like there's gotta be some coaches who are like, absolutely, I don't care, we'll draft him this year, don't need to see another year, yada yada. And then you just look at him, he's so built, like low, good center of gravity. But I think, like Hood was saying, there's some things that he could put on tape for like that those running style things that I hope he comes back. But that running back room is going to be,
you get really quick, you get Dillon Johnson on tape versus a Michigan, Ohio State, or any of those types of games, conference championship game, potential CFP NY6. Those are the games that are going to determine whether or not I would say he leaves or not. You get a physical defense that's on a high pedestal that you can perform against.
Yeah, it'll compound, because I think that USC game was one of those games. Same thing with the Oregon game. And I think you see him do it against the Pac-12, they'll be like, okay. But you see it if he plays at Georgia or, like you said, a Michigan, Ohio State, somebody like that, and he does the same thing, I think that it's going to be hard to not reckon that. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Before we get to the defense, I want to really quick talk about the receiver room. Izzo, I'm gonna go with you on this one. They didn't have as many receptions as they normally do, but a lot of big time plays. I mean, we had at least 4 plays over 20 yards. Rome had 3 for 111 and 2 touchdowns with a long of a 44. Westy had 7 for 64. Jeremy had 6 for 63, and Polk had 4 for 55. But Polk had a 30-yard one. Bernard had a 28. Westover had a 28. They got those big plays back that they weren't getting when people were blitzing those A gaps before. What do you think about how the receivers performed, given the strength of the defense we played against?
It's tough to judge because they were so. I'm trying to be PC here, but it's tough because they're so much better. Our wide receiver room is so much better than every DB room that they play. Mm-hmm. Like it's totally for the most part, it's unfair. Like you have 5 NFL receivers on this roster, and regardless of their age, they're overmatching everybody that they play. So I commend the staff for being able to spread out the ball and share the shine essentially, because I mean, like, you would think that in an offense with Jalen and Rome, you wouldn't be so confident in being like, look at the production of our third wide receiver, Jeremy Bernard, this year because J-Mac's been hurt and you've got all these guys. But that he's put enough on tape so far that he would excite any coach. And so, I don't think that there's anything necessarily special from this game, because outside of USC, I believe it was the SC game. Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. They've done a pretty good job at spreading the ball out on every single opponent we've played. So, you just can't keep every mouth fed. Like, I feel when we were trying to be nitpicky on the offense in the previous weeks, we're like, we want to see outs from the tight ends. And then they did that this game. They did that the game before too. It's like, bro, what do you find? What is the area of improvement that you can find on this offense right now? I mean, yeah, at the beginning of the year, it was, we're not running the ball enough. And then now it's like over 100 yards in every game is the expectation at this point. So maybe Hood can expand on it more, but I just don't have any like nuanced thoughts on the wide receiver group performance from this game as I feel like a justice.
And Hood, I'll go with you on this way. They're takers, and we're looking at like Izzo was just talking about the number 3 receiver. If you're going to break down between McMillan and Bernard, because those are probably what we're going to say are the number 3 for this moment.
Like 6 feet.
I think we got 47 catches, almost 700 yards and 4 touchdowns. Kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's like that third receiver is so productive in this offense. It's hard to ignore it. I mean, Polk is like 57 yards away from a 1,000-yard season himself, and we're gonna have back-to-back season with 2,000-yard receivers. And then Rome was a beast. I mean, having to fight through everything that he was. I mean, they were holding him everywhere that first half. He still has those 3 catches for 111, and 2 of those catches are touchdowns. And I mean, you try to contain him. He only catches 3 balls, but every ball he catches is huge, and he's got guys draped all over him.
Yeah, I think I would say just a takeaway in regards to being impressed by it would be Jeremy. Just in the role that he was in, they really needed him in like an intermediate kind of explosive role, and a kind of conversion role. Also, too, how impressive was that run after catch? Where he's protecting the ball and like moving in small spaces, manipulating defenders. That's elite stuff. That there's a lot of NFL players that don't have that vision or that.
No kidding.
Those movement abilities. One thing I will say in regards to taking the not next step, but there were a lot of reps where I felt like I would like for Rome sometimes to be on offense sometimes and not allow somebody to push him out of bounds or to get on him. Hand fight, get some of those guys off of you. And then also, too, you're a wide receiver one. You see Marvin Harrison walking over to the refs like, come on, bro, what was that? Come, you got to call it, and sometimes you'll just see Rome kind of put his head down or be on a knee and then just run back to the huddle. Walk to that ref. Hey, man, what are you seeing? Like, what's different? Okay, so he's actually holding me on the inside of my pad, bro. So if you could just watch that part, just command respect,
And he got that kind of personality that they're gonna like. Those guys are gonna listen to him.
Likability, yeah. But I totally you're right. Like if you think about the alpha wide receivers in the NFL, they got that dog. Like they show. Rome has that dog in him. Like he when I've seen him at practice, he practices like a professional, and he has for a while. It's business, bro. From the time that he shows up. There's other guys who which is important, bring some swag to the room, bring some energy and some fun to the room. But Rome is like that dog, like absolutely show 100% details. Yeah. And so that's interesting. That's actually like a really good point that I wouldn't have thought of. That's great.
All right. Let's look over to the defense. Hood, I'll stick with you on this one. Who really stood out to you? Is there any plays or is there players that were like, yo, this stood out and this was game changing?
Oh, well, so outside of Don, man, I gotta, and obviously the huge play everybody talks about, it still happened, but I gotta say Zota, man, shout out to Zoe. At the end of the day, we were looking for big explosive plays and a defensive stop. And while, he did drop the ball early, that was a big explosive play on defense that we were looking for and looking to have. Yeah. And, previously, prior to that, we saw a couple dropped interceptions, what I mean, by Raylan and then Nunley's kind of play in the first half. And this was, I was actually saying it too, like we don't take advantage of those opportunities, those random bounces that bounce off a knee, bounce off a shoulder pad and pop into somebody's hands. We tend to drop those. So him taking advantage of that opportunity, getting that crowd going crazy. I saw the high knee lift on the side. I was like, well, Zoe moving. Zoe was moving. But then obviously they got him back. But then if you see the possession, I believe after, and then the final possession, man was flying around, made one of the key tackles on the sideline where everybody else rallies to the ball to help him make a tackle. So definitely, I would say the resolve in that young man, taking coaching in that moment and coming back, and then also the coaches putting him back out there and showing that they have the trust in him, and trusting him to make the plays. And he went out there and did.
And that moment, like I said, is mitigated a lot because his brothers picked him up on the next play. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? They picked him up on the next play, so it ended up not being something that cost us dearly. And I feel like it's been like that with the Huskies in general all year. There can be a bad mistake, and championship teams pick up their players when that happens.
100%, Mike.
And that's literally what's happened. I was having an argument with somebody about Jalen Daniels and Michael Penix because Daniels has 3 games that they've lost where he had a huge either interception or fumble that helped cost their team the game, where Penix's problems really haven't cost UW a game yet, knock on wood. And I think it's because of plays like which we saw with Tupatala, where it was a bonehead play. It just happens. He was excited, but his guys picked him up on the very next play, and it ended up being a 9-point swing at that point.
Can we talk about family culture? And it's hard to define that, right? But this is the perfect microcosm of what that family culture is, right? Because it really did look like on that safety on that very next play that 3 players on the defensive line and the linebackers were like, you know what? I absolutely got my boy. Yeah, 100%. I'm going 100. I'm going over 100%. I'm going 110 right here, and really showed up and picked him up. And man, that's just one of those things. Like we've talked about. The offense has been, there's little things guys can improve on, and it's been nails all year. We've talked a lot about improvements that we need on the defense and interior defensive line and things like that. But it is absolutely something to be said by these coaches and by these players to pick each other up like this in key moments, because this is not the first time that's happened this year, where it's like they're struggling a little bit, finding a rhythm, and then boom, that play happens. It could have been a disaster from there. They could have run for 4 yards and then gotten enough separation and then thrown a 15-yard pass, and all of a sudden that gets thrown out. but you go up by 7 because of that safety. And so, yeah, man, I just wanted to reiterate or piggyback on that because I'm excited by that point, Mike. You're dead on, man.
I went from being like, oh, we need to fire everybody, to then the second half being like, hey.
Guilty. I'm sorry. I'm a fan too.
Let me ask you this. When we're the defense, I think there was a bunch of people. I think Thule is a game changer. I think our defense is not the same when he's not in the middle. And I think he's a dog. I think we need him, especially next week against Oregon State. But if you're going to have a conversation with Chuck Morrell and William Inge, what are you telling them that it's going to that you're like, hey man, I see this. Why can't we just do this a little quicker? What do you think is keeping what do you think the adjustments are that they're making at halftime that they can't make during the first half that we're seeing? Because the defense looked terrible in the first half and then completely flipped the script.
That is very tough because I keep pointing to this, Westy mentioned the physicality that the offense is playing with in practice. And since this staff has gotten in there, we know that the attention to detail on offense is extremely meticulous. We have not felt that same effort and energy into the details on defense. And I don't know whether or not that's because they feel like they don't have the amount of depth that they need there. If you only have 1, 2, 3 corners, can you really go super hard with tackling in practice? So those are kind of the things that I think it's more of a practice thing. Like you're going to have to really drill tackling. You're going to have to really drill your footwork. I mean, I think we saw the huge development in Meach this year because he put in the work in the offseason to learn how to prepare and also matching his eyes with his feet, planting and shooting gaps, jumping routes, predicting what's going to happen. And I just think it's tough at this point in time to really like focus in on the physicality that's kind of needed on the outside. Cause I think everywhere else is pretty solid. Utah really only had explosives in the pass game, and with missed tackles. So, and that's the majority of these explosives that we're seeing.
Yeah. Izzo, you got anything to add?
No, I think that's nails. I think that's perfect.
All right. The next one is I think one of our favorite segments on here is when we talk about what can we do to improve.
Oh boy.
Because we'll start with the offense. And Izzo, I'll start with you on this one. When we look at the offense, what are the levels where you can see the improvement happening? Is it more of the same where we're talking about the interior? What do you see?
I mean, just from this game was the first time where the stats jump out to you on third down. And, I don't want to be overly positive here because there are areas for improvement on the offense that we can call out, but they were meticulous in their drives. And so there was more third down opportunities in this because I felt like we were leaning on the run game more than we have. Right. And so they're putting them into short positions or, what have you. But I thought this was like one of the tougher games for the interior offensive line. There was some times where if you go back and rewatch where there were some guys who shot through the gap a little bit. And I do think that they were bringing A and B pressure on this. And I think that is like the formula for a lot of defenses right now. It's tough though, because like, I don't know. Like I just, when I think about areas of improvement, do you think about what we talked about with Mike and the deep ball and maybe him trusting himself a little bit too much and throwing, guys into the general in the general vicinity of receivers. And that's what you pick out. It's hard to look at his stat line and be like, hey, I'm mad at that. So for me, maybe just more consistency up front against high quality defensive lines, but that's as deep as I got to go. And maybe there's better call outs than that. But yeah, I thought they went to the tackle because they went to the off tackle runs with DJ because they feel more confident in the exterior again in their matchups. And so maybe that's just a team thing, and those are strength versus strength in this game in particular. But yeah, I thought that there was we're so used to excellent play from the interior offensive line to this point, except for 1 or 2 games, that it kind of stood out in this one a little bit.
Okay. Who? What about you?
Just kind of like I got 2 things, man. Just kind of like I mentioned earlier, early game execution. Whatever your script is, whether that's 10 plays, 12 plays, 15 plays, 20 plays, the whole first half, execute it early because you only benefit the defense if you start early. We had, I think, our first possession. I feel like it might have been a 3 and out.
Yep.
And they were misses by Mike, as well as I think we might have ran once on that possession. But at that same token, like when we are at our best is when we're starting early, executing early, and your script is supposed to be what you've been drilling in practice and what you've been practicing the most, and should be coming out there to start fast and executing early. And it just doesn't seem like we've done it. And then the second thing I'll say is when Rome did get that touchdown pass, the back right of the end zone, I believe I remember the announcer saying Washington with their 9th straight pass attempt. At some point, we got to stop. We got to stop spamming the pass. I get it, but you talk about that A and B gap pressure. You're allowing it to happen. You're allowing a lot of these runs or these hits on Mike to happen by making your offense so predictable. You run 9 times or you pass 9 times in a row. As an edge, I'm pinning my ears back. As an experienced defensive coordinator in Morgan Scalley, and a good one, I'm pinning my ears back. Go on to clap, see what's going on. Okay, boom. Now we're gonna just run check. And I don't feel like a lot of that has been consistent. To be honest with you, DJ's in a rhythm, and it's like, oh well, I'm gonna pass 8 times in a row now. So,
sure. And you know what I would like to, I'd like to personally see more. I feel like Penix is a lot more athletic than people are leading on. That touchdown run looked really, really good. Yeah. And early in the season, I wouldn't do this, but where we're at right now, a little bit of those read option type plays where those guys are going to bite down, especially in the next few games. For a fact they're going to bite on that run because they don't think Penix is going to keep the ball. And letting him maybe you do it only 2-3 times a game, but in places where we really need the yards, he's going to be out there all alone. I also would like to see them kind of, since they run so much motion, love to see them utilize like a little shovel pass, something that still is going to be considered a pass on the stat line, but where you have a Bernard or one of the running backs coming in motion and him doing something quick where they can cut it up. And before those blitzers even get in the backfield, because you're going to be hitting the B and C gaps and taking it wide. Those are where I can see them really being able to get the defense on their toes and keep them from wanting to blitz those A gaps. All right, let's go to the defense. Izzo, where do you see this is, I think, where we're going to be able to have the most criticism because we had such a rough time on defense to start. Where would you start with defensive improvements?
Yeah, it seemed like we were so short up on the penalties the last couple games that was the one that kind of stood out to me. And we talked about this. I mean, how much of this is on the Pac-12 refs? Like, there's an argument there for sure. But I guess if I have to choose somewhere, I mean, we just in these last 2 games out on the stretch, especially Oregon State, when you're going up against Jonathan Smith. We need to be able to be physical and be disciplined at the same time, to the point that we're not catching some penalties on these, on these plays, especially on the deep ball. So I think just for a little bit more nuanced, like instead of choosing player or position group, I think we all saw, a team that shouldn't have put up this amount of points in the first half do so. So I'll just go with, I just want to see some things shore up from the staff on the first half, just imploring some discipline on our guys and having that expectation level get raised week to week so that we can see improvements on these things that demand discipline week to week. And it's tough when you got this many injuries on the defensive side, but
Agreed.
Great teams that win national championships, they go 2-3 deep, and that's got to be our expectation. So I'll go with the discipline, general discipline, and I'll use penalties as an example of that.
All right, Hood.
Great word, man. Discipline, and I'll actually tie it into something that we're seeing on the field. I think we rally well, and everybody in our defense does have motors. We can't, knock the effort, but those motors and that rallying is very undisciplined. We saw Barnes able to kind of slowly manipulate himself within his own offensive lines. We saw, obviously Caleb's a whole different, difficulty there, but we're seeing a lot of like over pursuit, terrible discipline when it comes to angles, gap integrity, things like that. Also, too, when been getting a ton of pressures, but why are you not getting sacks, Bralen? You're over pursuing the quarterback. You're also not playing the ball. You're trying to play the quarterback. That's one thing ZTF's really good at is if he's in close proximity, he's not trying to make the physical sack all the time. He's going to go for the ball. And I think that's one element of Bralen's game is where he's got to slow down once he bends that corner, break down, make a play on the ball if you feel like you are struggling to get there to the man. So I think that's just really important. It's just kind of slowing down. They're all playing with their hair on fire, and I understand it. You got a lot to prove out there, but that D word, man, that discipline is definitely biting us in the butt with gap integrity and angles.
Yep. I guess for me, where I would like to see the areas of improvement is when Morrell and them guys start getting aggressive with their play calling. I think you start seeing a lot more happening on the defensive end. You start seeing a lot more pressures. We have guys that are extremely athletic at the corner, the safety, and linebacker positions. I want to see them used like missiles. You know what I'm saying? Where, hey, if we're having a hard time stopping the run, let's run blitz. Let's send Carson. Let's send Eddie. Let's send them guys, because instead of having to wait for them to read the play, if we know where they're going, send them immediately so they're shooting it. And if it happens to be a passing, you have a dude right close to the quarterback blitzing and causing problems, or even maybe if they pick them up there, it's allowing your edges to make plays. I just want to see the aggressiveness, because it seems like when we start sitting back in zones and our corners are playing 10 yards off, they start eating us up. And we don't have anybody getting to the quarterback, but we don't have anybody really covering. If we're going to get beat, let's go down swinging.
Mike, just to that point, man, piggybacking off of that, you see versatility in the front seven in regards to simulated pressures and a bunch of people at the line, and then, a DN drops in coverage, and then Carson drops. But you're not seeing that versatility and I would say like coverage diversity from the DBs. You're not seeing them press bail or press blitz, and you have your middle field player running over. Like, you're not seeing a bunch of diverse coverages on the back end. So while you got all this stuff going on in the front seven, that doesn't mean anything if I got protection. So it's still easy slim pickings by the DB. So I think you got to confuse them on the back end as well as what you're doing with the simulated pressure.
You know what I would do if I was Chuck Morrell? I would show that defensive back room. I'd show them video of the old Philadelphia Eagles defense with Brian Dawkins and Troy Vincent and Bobby Taylor. They were really big at disguising coverages and blitzing safeties coming up and never knowing where the blitz was going to come from, but it was coming. And so they would have to guess. And if they guessed wrong, there was usually somebody with an open shot to the quarterback. And I think, especially when we start playing against higher competition where, hey, the athletes are as good as us, or maybe even in some cases better, I think that's what they use to mitigate it. Because you saw Utah doing that against us, where they would try to hide the blitz. And luckily we were smart and figured it out, but it was effective a lot of the time. And it put Penix on his heels. So, all right, is there anything else you guys want to add before we move on to the next segment? We're good? All right, real quick. Dubbed Up Podcast is brought to you by Auto Presents. Make sure you go check out the next Goodfoot event at Clockout Lounge on January 13th, featuring Bamboo the Pistola, excuse me. Also, make sure you guys go and join the Discord. The link is down in the bio. It's the best spot to get information for the dogs. If you want to know about recruiting, if you want to know about who might be injured, if you want to know about any of the information first, it happens in the Discord. It's free to join, but just for $8 a month, You can get the VIP information. My guy Izzo, Noah, and everybody else that contributes to the Discord has got all the information first. Plus, you never know who you might find in there. There's always somebody special in there. And also, if you just like talking dogs, there's always conversation happening all day, every day. So make sure you go do that. Also, go join the Twitter as well. Good stuff happens at Twitter. You know what I say? I say us on Husky Twitter, we're the tip of the sword, man. We're there battling with everybody for the dog.
The fight, baby.
Yep,
Nobody fights the fight like Hood, too, man. Go follow Hood on there, man.
I already know. Yeah. I be hopping on a lot of his points because they're Duck fans, man. Duck fans. Yeah, I'm talking to y'all. Y'all know who I'm talking about.